So this is Rossiu. Rossiu was introduced into Gurren Lagann in episode 5 when the cast falls through the floor or the ceiling, depending on where you're looking, into this poor rundown village of Adai. This village is so small and so underdeveloped that they can't have more than 50 people in the village, otherwise everyone will starve. Now throughout this episode, two children or three children technically were born, forcing them to exile at least two people to keep them at the cap of 50. Ultimately, the village chief rigs it so that two orphaned twins, Gimme and Dari, get exiled. Rossiu finds out, doesn't like it, and essentially leaves with them, and they join Team Gurren. Now, as a child, he was a logical but curious child. He loved learning. That was the main reason he wanted to go with Team Gurren, so that he could learn more about the surface world. He always brought logic and reason to Team Gurren, which was, with Kamina at the helm, was sorely lacking in both of those things. So he was a fantastic addition. After Kamina's death, he very silently, supported Simon as best as he could without actually raising his voice. Once Simon found his center again and he was back to being who he needed to be, Rossiu was a little bit more outspoken, not as much as he could have been, but he was back to supporting Simon, helping him pilot Gurren Lagann, and eventually they do take over the surface. And that's great. It's fantastic. He could have been more supportive after Kamina's death, but he was a child himself. He had seen a lot of death himself. They all had seen a lot of death. That's just the way the world worked. I get it. And then post-time skip. Rossiu becomes a vile, narcissistic man that honestly seems like the only thing he cares about is being in power, being in charge, like his old village chief was. Going so far as to stage a coup. He stages a kangaroo court, a rigged trial, where Balambo is Simon's defense attorney. And he's essentially blaming Simon for the anti-spiral trying to destroy Earth, completely neglecting to mention that the only reason why the number of people on the surface hit the million as quickly as it did is because he was violently, physically forcing people out of their homes that didn't want to live on the surface. Now, to be fair, eventually the population would have hit the million it needed to hit for the anti-spiral to start taking action. So yes, him doing that forced anti-spiral to start attacking while Team Gurren was still alive to do something. I'm not giving him credit for that because he had no way of knowing that was going to happen. He was forcing them out so that he could count them, neglecting to think about the fact that, we could just count them while they're underground instead of forcing them to the surface, right? Fine, whatever. The anti-spiral attacking when they did is 100% Rossiu's fault. And instead, he blames Simon, holds a kangaroo court to sentence him to death, to take control and become the supreme leader. All the while, whenever somebody asks him if this was all about a coup, he's like, no, I would never stage a coup. It was a coup. It was a coup. He wanted power. He wanted to be in charge. He wanted to be the one making decisions. In all fairness, what happened, who should have been blamed for the anti-spiral attack, and the way the punishments should have been doled out should have been in Keaton's hands, as he was legal affairs bureau's head. He was in charge of legal affairs. That was his department. But instead, Rossiu took over and he decided. Nobody else got a decision. It was all him. That's a coup. No two ways around it. And then, in an attempt to try and save as many people as he can, supposedly, he still sacrifices hundreds of thousands of people. without batting so much as an eye. He gets a little stressed out, right? But he doesn't hesitate to sacrifice people, just like his village chief back in Adai didn't hesitate to rig a selection process to exile two small children just because they didn't have parents. That's where he learned it from. He doesn't care about people. He cares about being in charge. And then when Simone is busted out of prison and him and Viral go and save everybody, keep in mind, lots of people still died because of Rossiu's choices. He doesn't get punished at all, right? He, at no point does he acknowledge that things were his fault. All he acknowledged is that he failed to stop the anti-spiral. He failed to protect people from the anti-spiral. That's not an acknowledgement of guilt. That's not an acknowledgement of doing something wrong. And then he goes back to Adai village and attempts to kill himself instead of trying to correct the things he did and correct his mistakes. He just decided, nah, to hell with it. I'm going to put a round in my head. All the while, Kinon's trying to tell Simone that Rossiu's not a bad guy. When I saw him when you got sent to prison, he was crying. But if you take a look at that scene, he's surrounded by papers. He's not crying because he sent somebody that was supposed to be his best friend, his brother in arms, to jail. Sentenced him to death on a whim to just take power. No. He's crying because he's seeing that he can't save everybody. He can't stop the anti-spiral. He's crying because he knows he can't do things that he knows if he had just admitted the blame and let Simone take the helm, Simone would have fixed things. Just like he did when they were in space. He busts out of prison and goes up and saves everybody. Everybody that Rossiu hadn't already gotten killed. He didn't care that he sent Simone to prison. He didn't care that he sentenced him to death, because if he did, he wouldn't have done it, right? He cared that he was losing power. He cared that he couldn't stack up to Simone or even Kamina, who at this point had been dead for a decade. He didn't care about any of that. He cared that he wasn't as good as Simone. That's it. He's a vile man. And it's not lost on me that while it's never mentioned who his parentage is, just that his mother died when he was, young, it's not lost on me that he looks almost exactly like the village chief at the end of the final episode. The second time skip, and he's now in charge of all of humanity. He's the ambassador of all of humanity to the other spiral races. A position he should have never been given, but I think Simone knew that if he didn't give it to Rossiu, whoever he did give it to, Rossiu would have staged another coup. And Simone didn't want that to happen to anybody else. He had dealt with it, he had made it through, and he was leaving the situation. So to avoid another coup, he just decided, you know what, Rossiu, you're in charge now. Shouldn't have been, but that's the decision he made. Because of how vile of a person Rossiu is. And don't get me wrong, Rossiu is a smart man. So making him the head ambassador, the chief ambassador of humanity isn't a bad decision at all. He's a smart man. He can figure things out pretty quickly. He just doesn't have any fighting spirit. And in Gurren Lagann, that's the most important thing. And with Kitan dead, that would have been the next choice. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of choices left. So while I think it was a bad choice, it was the best of what few choices he could have made. But maybe that's all just my opinion. This was the breakdown for Rossiu Adai. The narrative character you want me to break down, you go ahead and let me know in the comments. If you think I'm wrong, let's argue about it in the comments. Otherwise, look forward to my rant breakdown on Charmy from Black Clover. It's coming because I have serious issues. But as always, thanks for watching.